Welcome back to the Path Podcast, Season 2, Episode 2. In this episode, we're joined by Dr. Anayanci Masis Vargas, who has a PhD in neuroscience, metabolism, and circadian rhythms, and also founded the NutraXQ company, in which she puts forward the 4 pillars of nutritional intelligence.
Yep, so we had the privilege of talking to her. It's been a great conversation. We see health in a brand new light, something we didn't think of before. She has a lot of insight. So if you want to think of health in a new light, stay tuned.
So I started my company a year and a half ago. Yes, it was like around May. So it's a little bit less than a year and a half. May last year. Everything started because I got sick of academia. So I was, since I did my undergrad studies, which I did it in nutrition and dietetics, I only work in academia. So I finished my bachelor and went straight to be a teacher assistant and start my master's. So all my professional experience was within the academic arena. So always, in labs or teaching at university degrees or like doing research. But I didn't really have any business experience. Maybe besides like, a couple of jobs that I had in undergrad that were like in a call center, picking up calls for a credit card company or things like that. But, like no experience. And yeah, so my journey started because my life as an academic felt like completely out of touch from the world. First, I was working like 12 hours a day minimum. And that was not compatible with the life that I wanted when I became a mom. So that's actually when I quitted academia after the first pregnancy leave. So when my pregnancy leave finished, my boss back then, I was doing a postdoc, which is what you do after the PhD, if you want to continue in a tenure track to become a professor. And she offered me an extension because my contract was about to finish, and I declined the extension because I knew that the life in academia was not compatible with the type of mom that I wanted to be. So that was the first thing. The second thing, right, I couldn't handle the ego battle in academia. It was like too much. And so it was kind of too much for me, like, that I got into science for the love of science, not like to fulfill any ego related thing. And I couldn't handle how the things were more like, like I do this and that's, it was just an ego thing. It was not for the sake of science, and I didn't like that. And also, yeah, I hated to be like in the ivory tower with the knowledge, but no real impact on people's lives. Like if you see like, academics publish papers all the time, but it happens like, I don't know, like 10, 15 years between like when something is published and when really impacts, especially people's health, when some discoveries are published in the scientific area, especially in health, it takes, I don't know, 10, 15 years, even more. Because nowadays, like in our current, and this is worldwide, this is not only the United States or here in Europe, like all the recommendations in terms of nutrition, in terms of health, they're still super outdated. So that's also something that I didn't wanted. I wanted like whatever I was doing to have an impact on people's life. And so as one of the consequences of working 12 to 14 hours a day during so many years, so I started in academia in 2010 until 2021. So we're 11 years that I was working like almost more than 12 hours a day, when I will have experiments. I will have crazy experiments at 3 in the morning, at 5 in the morning, at 1. Wow. Yeah. And on top of that, I will, work the normal shift of 8 hours during the day. So I end up with a burnout after. So I think I was hanging by a thread, and then I became a mom. And I think that all the, the sleep deprivation that you have as a new mother, and then I started a new job that I was working from home, but I honestly didn't set up proper boundaries. So I was working as a scientific editor for a big company. And I had to deal with academics from California, but also from Australia, being in Amsterdam time. So of course I had meetings at 5 in the morning or at 10 p.m. where it was crazy, and I didn't set up the proper boundaries. And that, with the fact that my daughter was only 8 months and I was still quite sleep deprived, led me into burnout together with, with all the years of working crazy hours. So I during that period, well, I was diagnosed with a burnout. I was in a sick leave for almost 2 years, and that was the period that led me into like a really really diving into what I wanted in my life, who I really was, what I wanted to do from now on, and what I was doing before, like why I was working like that, what in academia, whose expectations I was trying to fulfill, because clearly it was not what I wanted. And that led me to, like a huge journey of self-discovery of what I wanted, also to solve my own issues with food and health, because in my early 20s I suffered from eating disorders. even even though I'm a nutritionist and a dietitian, which was like really, ironic, um and a little bit cruel, because like you have all the knowledge, and I was always like hammering myself, like, how come I know all this and I cannot put it into practice, and I cannot take myself out of this?
Right.
And that's when I realized that knowledge is not enough, that the IQ is not enough. And when I started to work in the emotional part, in also, my social part, how I will handle, the peer pressure of like when you go out to the cinemas, or you go out with your friends and so on, like, oh, come on, just have this, or have this drink, or let's see, share these nachos, or whatever, something like that. So when I went through this process of recovering from the burnout, that I actually had therapy almost every week, and did a lot of inner work, shadow work, journaling all the time, meditation daily, exercising just for the sake of becoming healthy, not as punishing myself because I ate, 200 calories more or something like that. So when that shift happened, was what like everything aligned, and I said like, okay, so knowledge is not enough. You need to work the emotional part. You need a strategy for the social part, and also for the adaptive part. Because for me, for example, I could hold like the perfect diet at home, but then I would reach holidays and I would go to an all-inclusive resort, and it would be, crazy.
It's out the window. Yep.
Yes.
That's how I am too.
Yeah. So and that's really common, and I could see that, and and also in my peers in academia, brilliant people with PhDs, like years working in metabolism and nutrition, and they were still snacking brownies during the experiments at 2 a.m. in the morning with me, because I was also one of them. So it was when, all this personal journey that like I literally needed to crash and burn, to kind of like figure all these things out. And when I
Right.
figured this for myself, I said like, okay, so now this is how I want to help people. Because I had the knowledge before, but I was there, in the universities researching, but not really having an impact. Um, and then when I discovered this on myself, I said like, okay, so I can just put up like a framework together of 4 pillars, where I combine all that, and I help people this way. And that's when I decided to found my company, NutriXQ. So like the Nutri is for nutrition, and the XQ is for, the different IQs, the IQ, the EQ, the social, and the adaptive quotient, that I work with people. And I try to adapt it to the needs of the person. Like I offer services from genetic profiling to try to, personalize the diet as much as possible when the person can afford it. But, not everybody can just like take out $800 to pay a genetic test to get like the perfect diet design.
Exactly.
But also I work with people that, like they can just afford a consultation, and we go through a really deep, nutritional history, and we try to tweak the things and all the symptoms, and they tell me their economic possibilities, and we work around that. So that's the way that I finally put together how to help with my knowledge. And that's when I founded my company, a little bit more than a year. So yeah, a year and a half, roughly, year and a half ago. Yeah, a little bit more. Yeah. So that's my
amazing.
journey. Yeah.
One of the things that really struck out to me was when you kind of talked about having that burnout, because I mean, I feel like we've all experienced that, where you just kind of keep pushing and pushing, and especially for like the self-development world, or even like working out, like gym culture, it's like you just have to keep going, and like suffering is like just the currency that you need in order to have the success. And I think, even just like taking a step back and being like, okay, yes, for the suffering, but there has to be a purpose beyond that. And then I think one of the things that I really appreciated from what you said is that like it's kind of like a catalyst towards change. Like, yes, burnout is bad, but it's also one of those things where you can kind of take it and learn from it and then be like, okay, what do I actually want to do? Because one of the most powerful things is when you realize, what do I actually want to do? How do I want to help people versus what maybe my peers or what society kind of tells me what I need to do in order to help people.
Yeah, very well said.
Yeah, exactly. And so the thing is that with the burnout, I think, I don't know if you have seen ever. There's a really popular video of Jim Carrey when he was faced with depression, because he's quite spoken about that. And he said that I'm not going to use his literal words because he was quite explicit with the way that he said it. But he said something like it was the way that when he experienced depression. So because my burnout lead me to depression. So like some people experience burnout and it's just like the fogginess and the cynicism and the attitude. But for me, it was like really at the end. I was depressed. The only reason why I was getting up every day was my 8-month-old daughter. That was it. And I remember from this interview that I watched with him that he said that is the way that your body just tells you like, F you, like, stop this. Stop of playing this character that you have created for me. This is not me, and this is not what I want.
Yeah.
And I feel that that's what happened with me. And then, of course, in therapy, I became to know that, like you do all this inner work and like which expectations you're trying to fulfill, but it's like something that it was kind of put in your head. It's not really yours, and then everything aligned. So yeah, it was like suffering, let's say, because it was not easy. And then when you go through this process, somehow you feel like you are in limbo, because that's how I felt during months. Because like I said, since I finished my undergrad, I only work in academia. So teacher assistant, then master student, then a research assistant, then a researcher, and so on. So my identity was linked to I'm a researcher. So the moment that I quitted that, I didn't have a clue who I was.
Yeah.
And this was hard, but that's where actually all the emotional work paid off. And that's also what led me to put all this framework together to help other people doing this or that going through something like that. Not necessarily a burnout, but for example, with food, it's really common. Well, I would say that food is actually the most socially accepted drug, because whenever we're sad, we eat a chocolate, or we are bored, we watch a movie and we eat, like the popcorn, the chips, the M&Ms, you name it.
Exactly. Yep.
Guilty.
Yep.
Guilty as charged.
You're stressed and you go for the bag of chips because you cannot handle the deadlines. Like, it's always like that.
Right.
So, and that's what I came to know, that, the traditional nutritional advice is always like you learn and you think that and that is enough. But you need to know how to handle your emotions, how to really synchronize with the signals that you have from your body. And that's where all the knowledge that I gained during the PhD was so important, because it was neuroscience and metabolism. So I really studied all the signals that come from our brain, because we have a whole area that is in charge of that, the hypothalamus, that is in charge of telling us, okay, now you're hungry, or you're not hungry, you're already satiated, you need to stop, but we ignore it. And usually we eat out of, like maybe out of habit, out of boredom, or just because we have heard that we have to eat 5 meals a day, because, like, I don't know who came up with this at certain point, regardless if you're hungry or not. So yeah, that's also why I teach to my clients, like, to really listen and be in sync with their body. But if you cannot really handle your emotions, it's really difficult, because then you cover, or like your coping mechanism to handle any strong emotions is usually food. And or you put yourself in a really restrict diet. I don't know, let's say, just for say one, like, you get rid of carbs. I did it also during years, and it works until it doesn't, because
Exactly.
like, when you're faced with the situation when you have the carbs in front or something like that, is like maybe, I don't know, a buffet, an all inclusive, or it's a day that you, I don't know, it can be at home or in the supermarket, but it's a day that you're super stressed and you cannot handle the restriction anymore.
Yeah.
Right.
And for example, like just putting a name on it, ketogenic diets are amazing to treat metabolic disorders, epilepsy, or other neurological disorders. Now there is actually being studied that they are great for some psychiatric disorders as well. But if you are healthy, all the restriction would just create like binge eating cycles at certain point,
Yeah.
which is not the case. Like it's not the best, it's not like sustainable. So that's also why really important to be in tune with your signals and try to handle the emotions. And that's what led me to create this framework as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, how I kind of think about food is I think of it as like a fuel source. So, am I expending the calories that I'm putting in? Are these good calories? Is it protein filled? Are there macro and micronutrients that I need? Can I stay away from the deep fried like fries for today? Like, can I reward myself? So that's kind of how I think about it, at least. It's like kind of being a fuel source, like calories in, calories out. That's what's helped me. I don't know if you feel the same way about that.
Kind of. I mean, my understanding has kind of changed as I've kind of dived into different diets. I think that like as you said, being so restrictive, like I've done the paleo diet, I've done the carnivore diet, and like it gets to a point after a couple months where you're just looking at that cheesecake and you can't not eat it.
Right.
So I do think like having a different reframing about what it means to eat these sorts of foods is really important. Like I think one of the bad things and the good things with like gym culture is that they just prioritize protein.
Yeah.
And maybe like they don't care about what type of protein, if it's like grass fed, like really good unprocessed protein. But it's like you have to be able to experiment with these different intersections inside of nutrition in order to kind of find out what works for you best.
Right.
And like you said, like there's much more to nutrition and getting healthy than just the diet, right? There's the social aspect and then there's the other aspects. I do think it's really interesting how you kind of said that, like with the all-inclusives and going out, because especially being a young person, like a lot of our culture is like going out to bars and that sort of stuff where maybe you want to, like I've done a couple months, like 3 months where I don't drink, and just feeling the peer pressure where you walk up there and get a water and your buddy's like, what are you doing, man? Where's the beer at?
Can I get you a beer?
Yeah, can I get you a beer?
Turn it down.
Yeah. And it's just interesting to see how like the societal pressure in order to drink or in order to like share nachos is just like, it's so powerful. And I think it's really important how you kind of highlight that in your framework for what you eat, because it's something that nobody really talks about because it's society itself.
Yeah, it's so ingrained in society to do that. So yeah, no one does talk about it. So yeah.
Yeah, it's good what you described earlier on saying the food as nourishment and not, like as something like you can use to cover your feelings. But then we need to take into account, especially that, the social part, and not only the social part in terms of friends and going out, but also, the social cultural part, because it's tied also to your memories with the family or how you share with your family. I'm Latin American, so going to one of my family members, like my aunts or something like that, when my grandma already passed away, but going to my aunt or even my mom also in like denying something is like the worst insult you can ask like any Latina. And like all families have this, like the grandma with the pies or something, like it's really difficult. So there has to be a balance, of course. So what I also teach my clients to in the social part, like to learn to when to compromise, depending on how important it is for the other person, but also how to set respectful boundaries, because I think that's also something that we really struggle a lot, whether it's with friends or with family. We think that because they are the closest people that we have, they will understand, but we really struggle on communicating our needs. So in that aspect, I also work a lot the psychology of how to setting up, healthy boundaries in a loving, respectful way without hurting the other person's feelings, and communicating properly your needs and your goals, which I think is a key in order to success in your goals and your healthy lifestyle or whatever you want to change.
Yeah, exactly.
100%. Yeah.
Cool. I was wondering so you kind of spoke on that. What do you think's the best way to go about creating those boundaries? Or maybe not just creating them, but like communicating them?
Well, I usually have like some sort of role play with my clients where we say like something like if like if you come to a gathering or something like that, you know the type of food that they're going to have, and you decide to bring a snack, then they offer you, say like, oh, thank you, but I brought my own today. Or something as simple as like, oh, I made this. Oh, I'm sorry, but I'm already full. Like, so if you if you just say like, oh, I'm on a diet, and they're gonna say like, ah, but why? Which one are you doing? And that's not good for you. And so if you just
Yeah.
give too many explanations, it's just opening like a Pandora box for debate. Like people
Yeah.
can come up with 10,000 arguments. But sometimes like you just need to follow certain strategies. Let's say if you're gonna go to a gathering and you know that the food is not gonna be good or like not healthy, let's say. So just have like a good meal at home or pass by somewhere else before you go, like some protein rich meal with a lot of fiber that is satiating. And if you want to bring something, try to bring something healthy enough. If not, just say like, oh, I already ate, or I'm full, but thank you for thinking about me. Just something kind, but without giving too much explanation, because then
Yeah.
it's like if you put that up there, like people will always like debate you, like, why dad, you're not doing the right one, or let's just do it, let's just forget
Yeah.
it today, so
Yeah, cheat day. Yeah.
yes. And that's another thing, the cheat day thing. Because we have this idea that if we have a cheat day, it would be okay, but then like people just overdo it. And the fact that we
Yeah.
create this idea that there is, restriction all the time, and we have cheat day, that backfires.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
remember when I used to have this thing that I couldn't have a chocolate at home, because I knew that if I would have a chocolate in a moment of stress, I will eat the whole bar. So I just wouldn't have it. But like when I went from that to kind of just have it, and yes, at the beginning I ate the whole thing, but then I was learning to work with my emotions and knowing like, okay, but I don't need to not have it. Neither I need to have it the whole thing, because that's something that happens, and it happened to me during years. I was this all or nothing mentality. So it's like if I just
Right.
try, it's like, who cares? I already have a piece. I'm just gonna have the whole bar, and I will
Yeah.
start again tomorrow. It's like
Definitely.
this is really common. And otherwise, I couldn't have it there. It's like, no, I'm not gonna buy it because I know that this is going to happen. Now I have, like chocolate bar at home, and I cut square. Sometimes after dinner, it's like, I have a square, and I share the other half with my kids or something like that. And some people tell me like,
Yeah.
how can you do that? How is it possible to have a chocolate bar and open it and just cut a square and eat it over like 2 weeks? It's like, it's possible. You just need to be in tune with the signals of your body and not use the food as a coping mechanism for whatever you're feeling at that moment. So it's
Yeah.
possible, but that's why I'm also against cheat days. I think that restriction in any form will always backfire. Of course, this is assuming that we are healthy, right? And of
Right.
course, trying to achieve our fitness goals is always important. But yeah, I can tell you, I tried every possible diet since I was 14 until 5 years ago. That it was where all this healing process started. Yeah, and no, it doesn't work. The best
Yeah.
way is to find balance, to know how to handle your emotions, to have, like a plan B, to adapt in situations like trips or, holidays and so on. And of course, uh, to communicate, to have good social skills so you can communicate your boundaries and your needs when you're with your family and your friends.
Yeah, definitely. You mentioned that you tried a lot of diets. If you don't mind me asking, is there a specific diet that you're on right now that's like worked for you for the past couple of years?
No, I'm not on a diet. I'm still breastfeeding, so I have a 20-month-old. So he still breastfeeds before going to bed. So I honestly don't really have any restrictions. If anything, I'm actually hungry all the time. That's how it is. But no, I just try to have enough protein, because that's something that happened. So I had in the past 4 years, I had two children. And I breastfed my first until she was a little bit more than 3 years. And that was already when my second was born. So I breastfed her also during pregnancy. And the only thing that happened, let's say the bad thing that happened, was that I lost a lot of muscle mass. So it is almost impossible to put on muscle while you're breastfeeding, because of course for gaining muscle you need testosterone, right? And we women also have testosterone, really small amounts, but we need that to increase muscle mass. And when you're breastfeeding, the testosterone is completely suppressed. So for the prolactin and the oxytocin, that are the hormones that produce and release the milk. So what I have been trying to do since my second was born was to increase the amount of resistant exercise. So I lift weights. I know that I'm not putting on muscle at all, but at least I'm trying to keep my body composition constant, at least not losing more muscle. So I actually have managed to shift a little bit my body composition, not much. And I already lost all the baby weight, but yeah, I don't really follow a diet. Just try to have at least 30 to 35 grams of protein per main meal because of the breastfeeding, that is really demanding.
Okay.
Yeah, but no, I'm not on a specific diet. I just eat a lot of fruits and vegetables, but let's say vegetable fruits, depending on the glycemic index. So as somebody that followed keto for like 10 years, quite cautious with a lot of foods or carbs. I don't tolerate well gluten, for example, so I don't really eat wheat. And let's say probably the moment that I will stop breastfeeding, I will go back to keto, just as a personal preference. As a neuroscientist, I know what a brain in ketosis is. It's really powerful. And it's, well, I guess you guys, if you have tried, keto and carnivore and paleo, you have been in ketosis, that is that feeling that is like your brain is always performing at its best. So I love that feeling. And I also run. So I love to run without having to fuel in my runs. And the only way that I can do that is when I'm keto. Like if I'm eating carbs, like half of the race, I'm already hungry.
Wow.
Yeah, so probably I will go back to keto one that I stop breastfeeding, because during breastfeeding is the energetic demands are so high that you can go into ketoacidosis. That is it's like the ketosis is like a amount of ketone bodies that is just enough for you to be burning fat. But when your metabolic needs are so high, the amount of ketone bodies in your blood is so high that you have a condition that's called metabolic ketoacidosis, that only diabetic people are really, really decompensated have. And it can lead into coma and you can die. It's really, really dangerous.
Oh, wow.
But like if you're a healthy person doing keto, you will never go there. That's only for diabetic people. So for example, diabetic people can follow keto, and type 2 diabetes can be reversed with keto, or type 1 can be handled with keto and they will need little to non insulin. But it has to be on the really strict medical and supervision from a qualified dietitian. In a healthy person, that will not happen. But if, let's say, it's a woman, like in my case, and you're breastfeeding, it can happen if you do it, because the demands of breastfeeding can be really high. But if that being said, is my preference. Doesn't mean that is the best for everybody. That's what I tell to my clients. Is I wouldn't, although it's the best for me because I love it. I love the feeling. I love the food. I love a steak with a chunk of butter over all these things.
Yeah,
but
Absolutely.
yeah, but is first, not everybody likes the same thing. Second, a lot of people prefer meatless options. And third, not everybody can afford it. So those are the things that, in order to recommend a diet, need to be taken into account. So I always say that nutrition has to be personalized. Yeah.
absolutely.
I totally agree. That's what I really like your approach, is because I think across the industry as a whole, there's a lot of standardization. Like people want to just follow like the keto diet, the paleo diet, without realizing that everyone is different. Everyone has different situations they're going through in life and different preferences. And so your approach to it is really like nice and really relieving, because it's like everyone has their own way of going about things and way of experimenting with what works for them. Like I've tried carnivore and I really liked it, But Ben, he tried it for, what was it, 12 hours and he couldn't handle it. So
Yeah, no,
he
it did suck. No, because it was just, yeah, and it's my preference, right?
Exactly,
So,
which is perfectly fine.
yeah.
And I think that's like a great approach to it, is that, yes, you can try these standard diets, but I think it's more about tinkering, like having that knowledge base, like you've said, and kind of tinkering with what works best for you, because I feel like that's the most long-term approach to it.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, and it's the same with, I don't know, like when people said like, oh, this vegetable is terrible, or these fruits are terrible, but you know, two different people, and this has been proven and published, like two different people can have the same banana and have completely different responses. So even, for example, the glycemic index, that is like, you know, this standard table that tells you like how much your blood sugar will rise when you eat a specific food, it can shift. Like I can give you the same banana to both of you, and the response can be completely different, even if we standardize by body weight and everything. So that's why it's so important to really make it personalized. Like for example, broccoli. Everybody says like, oh, broccoli is like a superfood. Some people cannot tolerate it, and they get like terrible gastrointestinal symptoms. But you know, so what is good for you is not necessarily good for me. So definitely it is. It has to be personalized, and of course, if you want it to be sustainable, it doesn't have to be only about the food. It's the, you know, changing the whole paradigm on how you see the food. If you really listen to your body, if you do it mindfully, you know, because another thing is that people tend to eat like super fast, and if they are alone, they are just like scrolling on the phone all the time. They don't even, you know, are in sync with the food. I can see you laughing, so probably you do this all the time.
No, I did. That's exactly what I do. That's why I'm laughing. I'm crying inside because I realize it's probably not good for me.
Yeah. So here's the thing. You really need to be in sync with all your senses on the plate of food so for you to get all the signals. There are different signals that we get into our brain, and that starts from since when you chew until, you know, like when the food reaches the stomach. Actually, I just read a study a couple of days ago about, you know, people around India and Bangladesh. They tend to eat a lot with their hands. And apparently that increases the satiety, because when you have contact with the food directly, it's like you're using an extra sense. It's not only seeing, smelling, and tasting it. You're also using, you know, your tact. You're also touching it. And that improves also the satiety. Yeah, of course, do it with proper hygiene, clean hands and everything. It's a little bit like for us here, like it's a little bit difficult because unless it is like a sandwich or, you know, or a burger, we don't really, and well, a burger, depending where in France, everybody use cutlery for a burger, which I thought it was mind blowing.
Yeah.
It's like,
When I went
why?
to France, it was weird.
That seems unnatural. Wow.
I know. Like I lived 2 years in France, so the first 2 years of my PhD were in France. The other two were here in the Netherlands. That is where I live now. And one of my first months in France, I went to eat out with some friends, and then I saw everybody eating the burger with a cutlery. I was like, "What's that? Like, why?" I didn't know.
Oh my god, dude! I wish you would have told me that. So I visited him in France. He studied in Monaco for a couple of months, and he went to class one day, and I was in Nice. And I found this restaurant that overlooked the ocean. So, and I was hungry. It was lunchtime. So I go up there and I sit down. I'm sitting next to this girl who's also from France, and I order a burger. And I didn't realize at the time that I shouldn't be picking it up with my hands. Like I kind of stuck out like a sore thumb. Like, okay, this is an American. He's not from around here. So that's funny. I didn't know that. That's weird. Yeah.
I bet it's interesting though, because it's like, I don't know. It honestly brings me back to like one of the points that you mentioned, where it's like there's all this research that's coming down the pipeline almost, you think about, and you said it's like a 10-year pipeline to where it hits what are the experts seeing and what's like the best, I don't know, quote unquote practices or the best methods, and that you have to wait so long for it to hit the mass consumer where they can understand and they can really synthesize that data and use it practically. And so like having that approach to where like with your company, where it's like you take all this expert data and these insights, and then you crunch that timeline to essentially zero by just providing it directly to the mass consumer. It's amazing.
Yeah, just to give you an example, I finished my PhD at the end of 2019, and one of my main findings was published, I think it was at the end of 2018, And for me, it was like, yeah, it was published, now it's known, whatever, right? And especially because it was, so I was contacted for a press release, and I saw that it was published in Men's Health and Women's Health, and in Deutsche Welle in Germany. It was translated in several languages. So I thought like, oh, now everybody knows it. And now it turns out that now that I'm actually practicing, and having contact with clients, or that I have been in several podcasts, when I said like, oh, do you know that blue light at night? Well, now that everybody's like, with the red blocking, this blue blocking glasses, the red or orangey, is not only for sleeping, because people think that it's only to not, to sleep better and to, not have an impact with your melatonin, that is the sleep hormone, everything. And they tell me like, no, what else it affects? It's like, oh, because I found this in 2018, that actually when you are exposed to blue light at night, you actually have sugar cravings and your blood glucose spikes. And like almost nobody knows these things. When I speak about that, it's like, how? Like, really? And for me, it was like, yeah, well, it was quite obvious for me because, I published it. But then I realized, like, how come people don't know this, And the same happens with a lot of research that other people has done. So what I try to do is, I also have a newsletter on Substack. I try to, like every week, look for a new article and try to, which has been like a challenge for me. I take the article and I try to digest it and then write accordingly, so people that are not in the scientific domain can understand and can translate that and use it, in their practices. That's something that I really struggled at the beginning, because I saw like nobody's reading my Substack, and I was wondering why. Of course, I was just like writing like it would be in the academic world, and nobody was understanding a single thing. So in the past year and a half, together with growing a company, I have also learned how to write in more lay terms and using less scientific jargon. But that's one of the things that I do, is try to keep myself updated and try to translate that knowledge into practical advice for my clients as well. Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing.
That is.
Well, one of the things that you just touched on was the like circadian rhythm and sleep, which I feel like is kind of like a little brother or little sister. People think to diet and nutrition, but I think there's more of like an integration between the two, that like from a approach that people should consider. Could you kind of talk on that a little bit more?
Yes, so that's true. When people think about metabolic health, they only think about, oh, it's food and exercise and nothing else. And it counts like nothing if you have like the perfect diet and the perfect workout, but you're sleeping bad, because all the hormones will be just a total disaster. And the problem is that when you sleep bad, then your melatonin doesn't release properly or is delayed. Then your cortisol is high, which will lead to, accumulation of fat, especially around the waist. That is the visceral fat, which is the worst in terms of health. And also the fact that we are super exposed to artificial light at night, which shouldn't be, because we actually evolve in a way that we were supposed to stop eating after the sunset. It's like kind of, just let's go back to the Paleolithic era, where we just have like not maybe just a campfire, like cook something before sunset and then go to sleep. So all this disruption creates a lot of changes in our hormones, and that impacts deeply our metabolism. So I always advise people first in the morning, and this is not only for the sleep, especially for the metabolic part, in the morning, try to receive at least 15 minutes of sunlight. If it's ideal, if you can catch the sunrise, because, all these hues, we think that it's only the light, but no, it's like all these hues. We have specific cells that go from the retina in our eyes to the brain, where the master clock is. So there's an area of the brain that is called the suprachiasmatic nucleus. That is where the control of the circadian rhythm is. So this is the master clock, to put it this way. So these cells that go from the retina to that area of the brain, they can perceive the hues of the light. It's not only the intensity, but also the color. So you see this light in the sunrise, that has this kind of orange or a little bit of pink or a little bit of red hues, and that gives you the signals that is the time to activate your metabolism. And it's the same during the sunset. When you get all these cues, it's like, okay, it's time to shut down. But then what will happen? We go inside our home and we turn out all the this super bright white light, and then we completely confuse our body. So what I advise, on top of the glasses, especially if you're gonna be in front of the screens, is and that's what we have here in my home is we have these bulbs that have this different spectrum of white light. So for example, now that autumn is approaching, especially here in the Netherlands, so it's cloudy and gray. It's really difficult to have like a sunny day.
Yeah.
So we put like a really bright white light in the morning. Then we shift towards it like after 2 p.m. We shift to one that is like a little bit more warmer, but like still a mix. And then after 4, if we need to have the lights on, that would be the warmer light. And let's say, for
Wow, I
example,
didn't know that.
for my kids, that they still sleep with a little bit of light, we have this kind of a lamp that is a little bit red. So this red light that is like as minimum as possible. So, they don't have that much circadian disruption. But ideally, we should all sleep in a completely dark room. If you put your hand like this, you shouldn't be able to see it. And if you see it,
Oh,
you
really?
need to
Okay.
use a mask, one of those eye masks to sleep.
Sleeping mask, yeah.
Wow. Yeah. So in my room, I keep my curtains open because I like waking up to the sunrise. I feel like it just gets me really like a clear mind. I feel rested, but I always do see like some light coming in, like from the moon. So I didn't realize like that could also like play a factor in disrupting the circadian rhythm. So that is something to look for, or take into consideration.
You use that to wake up because that's the idea, to wake up with the sun. So that's ideal. The problem is that if it will be only the moon, but unless you live in the middle of the forest, there is plenty of artificial light outside. So if it would be only the moon, it would be okay. But yeah, we
Yeah.
have all the street lights and so on that always filter somehow. So ideally, what we do is that we close the blind, so it's kind of blackout, and we have one of those. I'm saying we here at home, we have one of those wake up lights that like really mimic the sunset, and then it goes like super bright, and that's our alarm.
Oh yeah,
You had
I have one of those. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like a sunset clock or a sun clock or
Yeah.
whatever. I use that instead of like the clock on my phone because I've like read somewhere that like if you wake up to like blaring like sounds, it's like your body's cortisol just like rises really
And that's what
like
wakes
high.
you up. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like you wake up in a state of shock almost, and so like having that sort of pleasant wake up is really nice.
And especially during winter, it's really helpful because I mean, I don't know you guys, but in winter I don't function. Like I really need some light in the morning. So I lived the first 25 years of my life. I was born and raised in Costa Rica. So moving to Europe and especially to the Netherlands with this gray weather all the time, it's especially during
Yeah.
winter for me, it's difficult, really difficult to get out of bed. I got used to have sunrise always at 5:30 the latest, and have 12 to 13 hours of sunlight all year long. So now, like especially during the winter, that the sunrise can be almost at 9 a.m. It's really difficult for me to wake up. So I really need one of those lamps in my bedroom. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
I might get one of those.
Yeah,
honestly.
it's honestly really pleasing.
Yeah.
And it's like got little birds too, like when you wake up. So yeah. So
All
it's-
right. Yeah.
it's-
Maybe.
you should
yeah.
look into it.
After this, I'll probably go buy one.
Yeah. But also one of the things I wanted to touch on was maybe like brain health and how we can kind of go about using nutrition, sleep, exercise in order to improve that. Because I know like myself personally, I've had like a lot of brain fog in that regard, and like maybe like memory problems during some situations, like maybe the day after you drink. I know it's a bad example, but it's like, yeah, exactly. But it's like having those situations where I'm just like constantly cloudy, And I was wondering if there was ways that we can kind of learn how to improve our brain cognition and like just keep like a stable high functioning. Because you mentioned keto as well as being a way where your brain's always firing at like not all cylinders, but at a really good rate. And I was wondering if there was a approach that you see that's a good.
Yes, I will say that the key to have a brain that is not foggy is a stable blood glucose. So that's
Stable blood
typically whenever you have like a lunch that will be with a lot of carbs, then it's possible that at 2 p.m., 3 p.m. you're crashing.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's when you feel this cravings like I need something sweet like now, and it's like when everybody goes for the coffee and the cake or the donut or something like that, because otherwise they don't function the remaining part of the day, right? So
Yeah, right.
the key for to a brain that is actually work steady, that has energy, is actually like a stable blood glucose. So of course, the gold standard would be to work with with ketone bodies in a ketogenic diet, because that's actually how we know that the brain is the healthiest, or the way that the brain works. Let's say all the chemistry is the best. Like that's why it's advised for from bipolar disorder to even treat Alzheimer's or Parkinson's disease. So, but it can be really restrictive, and if you're healthy, you don't really need it. So, what you need is actually to make sure that your blood glucose is stable. So, always have good protein in your meals, with a good amount of fiber, and try to stick to carbs that are complex. And
Mm-hmm.
this is a little bit tricky because my response to certain complex carbs can be different to yours, but in general, it's kind of the same thing. Like maybe a little bit of quinoa, or maybe some brown rice, or some like baked sweet potato, things like that. But don't go like crazy with the white carbs, all the ultra processed pasta and ultra processed bread, like super white bread and all these things. Neither too much fruit before the main meals. If you eat fruit, make sure that you put together some healthy fats and some protein. Let's say like a high protein, low fat Greek yogurt with some berries and maybe a couple of like a handful of walnuts or something like that. But never the fruit alone, because what happens is that and especially no juices, because then if you drink it like that, it has no fiber, there's no protein, there's no fat, and it
Yeah.
goes almost straight from the stomach to the intestine, where it's absorbed immediately. And then you have these sugar spikes, like you feel like energetic in the moment, but then your pancreas does what it should be doing, release insulin, the glucose goes down, and then it's when you feel like super foggy and sleepy, and you have this kind of crashes in the middle of the afternoon. So the key,
Interesting.
Interesting. Yeah.
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 Yeah, whenever I snack, I've been eating fruit like just on its own, so that's also something to consider too. So right now it's been like pineapples, blueberries, and like blackberries, but I never like mixed it with anything like a Greek yogurt or something like that. I'll have Greek yogurt on its own if I want another snack, but I have like had a crash before. Like I rarely take naps, but I took a nap the other day after I had some fruit, like 2 hours later, for like 30 minutes, and I'm like, okay, I never do this. What's going on here? So that makes sense. But yeah, mixing like walnuts and get some protein in there as well, and not just all that sugar. That's good advice. Right.
Yeah, also, so what we try to avoid with keeping a constant glucose levels is to avoid the insulin spike, because if you have high blood sugar, then you have high insulin, and that insulin just like there's a burst of insulin that just capture all the sugar to put it back in the cells. It's like the insulin is like a key. Let's say the cells are like a bedroom, and the insulin is the key that opens the door for the glucose to enter. So if you have a lot in your blood, the normal response is to release a lot of insulin, so everything goes in. But then after like 45 minutes, an hour, or even two, depending on the food, is when you have that crash. And those spikes in insulin is what we also try to reduce, not only for the energy at the moment and to avoid that brain fog, but because those spikes in insulin in a chronic way can lead to inflammation that can lead to metabolic diseases. So of course, there's no point of being like super obsessive, because there are people also on social media saying that you have to eat the food in this order, and like that's also not healthy, because part of being healthy is also to have mental health. And if you're obsessing over every single bite, then you
Exactly.
are not
Right.
healthy at all, right?
Yeah.
uh, but just like a really general advice, to try to always have pair the three macronutrients, not have only carbs alone. If you have a fruit, just pair some healthy fats or some protein with it, and you will be fine, right? Of course,
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
you're not healthy, then you need probably to have certain restrictions and remove certain foods. But if we're just speaking about healthy people that exercise, that just want to be performing well and meet their fitness goals, just try to equilibrate the three macronutrients, and you will be fine. And of course, try to see how you respond to different foods, because like I said, it can be that for me a banana doesn't do much, but for you it will give you brain fog after an hour and a half or so. So it depends.
Yeah.
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 Wow. I was curious. Have you done any like research into like intermittent fasting and kind of the effects of that in collaboration with nutrition?
Yeah, well, it's also something that I practice. I do that. I try to
Yeah.
eat to fast at least 12 to 14 hours a day, minimum 12. Because that, there are people that sometimes they are snacking while watching Netflix at 9 p.m. and then their breakfast is
Yeah.
at 6 in the morning when they wake up. So the
Mm-hmm.
body really doesn't have this period of rest, and that's part of actually maintaining a healthy circadian rhythm. Because we have, like the two phases, so the active phase of the circadian rhythm and, the resting phase, and that resting phase cannot happen properly if you don't even have those 12 hours of fasting. So in the master clock that I mentioned before, there is so all the circadian rhythm research started in Germany, or especially when the master clock was identified. So in circadian rhythm science, we speak about Zeitgeber, which is the German word for time giver. There are three main time givers or Zeitgebers. The first one is the light. That's the one that I told you that's super important. The sunlight in the morning, the sunset in the afternoon. Try not to have a lot of artificial light at night. The second one is the proper timing of the food. So, for example, if you want to have a healthy lifestyle, a healthy metabolism, or if you also want to, stop jet lag, you stick to a proper schedule of meals. For example, if you are in the States and you're coming to Europe, just keep the airline meals. Anyway, they're terrible most of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, they are.
and then just try to eat in the schedule of the place that you're going to be. So that
Okay.
already, put your metabolism and all your rhythms in the time zone that you're going to be. And it's the same if you're home. You just like try to eat no more than 12, a window of 12 hours maximum a day, and that of course will increase the way that your metabolism is working considerably. Now this is like more like time restricted eating, so it's like having a window of 12 hours, and then it's like intermittent fasting protocols when you're speaking about 16/8, for example, or
Yeah,
people
yeah,
that
that's the one
do
I do.
OMAD, that is one meal a day. That is also possible. In men, it's a little bit less difficult to say, let's say, the recommendations, because in general, like doing this has shown like really good results to change metabolic composition, or to control the weight, to control the amount of calories that you eat without really restricting or measuring the food. In women, we have to be a little bit more cautious because it depends on which phase of the menstrual cycle we are. It can spike the cortisol and it can actually fire back.
Oh,
Whoa.
interesting.
Interesting.
So yeah, that's actually has to be a little bit more personalized, like the amount of hours that you fast according to the menstrual cycle. um yeah, of every woman, and especially if it's a woman with PCOS, polycystic ovary syndrome, that unfortunately right now is quite common. And these are women that tend to diet a lot because they struggle controlling their weight. So that has to be careful in the way of doing it. But in general, all the research in time restricted eating or intermittent fasting is quite possible, positive, sorry. Yeah.
Interesting.
Wow.
Have you found that like different methods of it, like you mentioned 16/8, like I was doing research into like maybe a 24-hour fast a week or something like that. Is there any benefits to that sort of stuff, like longer term fasting, or is it like kind of max out?
So it depends on what is the purpose that you're fasting
Sure.
for,
Yeah.
because if it is just to try to regulate how much you eat without really measuring the food or counting calories, as 16/8 will do, or even OMAD, when the people just have one big meal. So OMAD stands for one meal a day, will be good. There's also one protocol that is like 5/2, where you eat like 5 days and you fast two. That also works. Some people do like a 24-hour fasting once a week to just kind of boost their immune system and their metabolism. That also works. But there are also other protocols that should be only followed under medical supervision, and like with the help of
Yeah.
dietitian, that are longer for several days. But that we're speaking about people that usually have certain diseases like cancer or some immune disorders that they kind of want to reset their immune system. But in general, if you are healthy and it's just for control your weight, at 16.8 is something quite doable for most people.
Okay.
And if
Yeah.
not, just aim for the at least 12 hours, because most of the
At
people
least.
don't even fast, not even 12 hours, especially if they snack late at night in front of the TV, and then by
Yeah.
the time that they wake up, they have breakfast immediately. Yeah.
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 I think one of the powerful things too is that like you should be sleeping for like 8 hours a day, so that takes a massive chunk out of like how long you need to fast.
Yeah.
I was curious, like you said, I think eat around sunset, right? And then it gives you, I was wondering if there's a certain minimum amount of time you should give between when you eat and then when you go to sleep.
So there is a new paper that was published like a month and a half ago. It was a German study. Um, what it says is that your mid caloric point should be before your mid sleeping point. Okay, I'm going to explain this. Uh, so let's say that you sleep between 11 p.m. and 7 a.m., those 8 hours. So it means that the midpoint, it will be 4 hours after you sleep, right? You fall asleep. So which means 3 in the morning, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it means that half of your calories should be consumed before 3 p.m.
Wow.
Okay.
So
Okay.
so that the mid sleeping point, 12 hours after, you should have at least half of your calories, which is usually not the case, because people sometimes like have something really quick for breakfast. Then because of work and everything, sometimes the lunch is just like a quick salad, a wrap, or a sandwich.
Yeah.
And then they have these huge dinners when you get home, or when you pick up some takeout or whatever. But usually the biggest meal is the dinner. And it shouldn't be
Yeah.
like that. Actually, by 3 p.m., let's say with that example, or by 12 hours after or before, depending on which day you're seeing your mid sleeping point, you should have had at least half of your calories.
Wow.
Wow.
Not doing that.
Yeah,
So
I
that's
don't
I,
do
I
that.
don't recommend people to track calories, because it's quite obsessive. But if you just want to make the exercise, just use an app, track your calories in a day, and divide them by half. And
Yeah.
all
Okay,
that
see how that
food
works.
should have been, consumed before those 12 hours before your mid sleeping point.
Wow.
And so this is assuming that your circadian rhythm will be healthy enough. Sorry, I am getting all the reflection of the flowers of my blinds there.
Oh, you're good.
So it's almost sunset time. So that's why I have the sun now in my face.
Yeah.
So I should be outside, having the sunset.
Yeah,
right
watching the sunset, yeah.
Yes. So that's another thing, that this is assuming that your schedule is standard, and you don't really shift it that much during the weekend, because if you are this kind of person that wake up at 6 in the morning Monday to Friday, but on the weekends you wake up at 10 a.m., then you have something that is called social jet lag, which
Yeah.
is similar to a jet lag, when you travel. But the worst thing is that this is chronic, because it's a lifestyle. And then it means that your lifestyle, because of social conditions, whether it's work or, usually work, and all the, responsibilities that we have during the week, you are not aligned with your chronotype. Which what does it mean? That, like, let's say that you are naturally a night owl, and that's why during the weekends you wake up late, but you are forced because of society to wake up early during the week. And then you have this misalignment, or what is your natural rhythm and what is the rhythm that society imposes to you. And if you follow this in a chronic way, then you can have some circadian misalignment that can lead to chronic diseases or metabolic disorders like diabetes, cancer, and so on. So in an ideal world, it should be so inclusive that the people should employers should ask for which is your chronotype, so we can adjust your schedule. But or people that are self-employed, that are entrepreneurs, they can actually play with this a little bit more, because we should be able to keep like a constant schedule, whether it's weekend or weekdays, to be metabolically healthy and to have a properly synchronized rhythm in our body.
Yeah.
Wow.
That is a powerful concept, because like, especially like when I had a 9 to 5 job like a year or two ago, like you have to wake up at 6 or 7 a.m., maybe even 5 a.m. Like you're at the complete behest of the employer. and juxtaposing that, I don't even know how I said that right, but comparing that against like a self-employed or an entrepreneur, it's like you kind of get to set your own hours. Yes, you work a little bit later, but you get to kind of play with a little bit more freedom outside of it and have a little bit more autonomy.
Yeah.
And like at the end of the day, the autonomy and the responsibility to kind of change the outcome of your life in different ways. And like we talked about this before with like having a multidisciplinary approach. So being able to experiment with your health and seeing how that affects your finances and your goals in life, or like being able to dive deep into your why and your personal self and really do self-development has ripple effects into finance, into your health too. So just having that autonomy and that even more so just like taking that responsibility is a really powerful thing.
Yeah, and actually that's where like things that what you guys do is so important. Like people don't, maybe now like the culture of entrepreneurs is coming like more and more, right? But I think once that you taste the freedom and of not having a 9 to 5, like you cannot go back.
Yeah.
I mean, that
Yeah.
happened to me. Well, mine was not even 9 to 5. With mine, I like 9 to 9 because I will always working in the lab. But is this thing that is, of course, it's a lot of work. Not everybody's able to do it because you need to have certain cushion also to be able to start, because it's not like you start a company and all of like that. You have like your ideal revenue and so on.
Exactly.
But the freedom that you gain in every possible aspect of your life in the long term is incredible. So actually, I was in the past, like the intro call that I spoke with David, I told him like how important it is. Also, that's something that I believe that not only nutrition, but actually financial education is something that should be taught in school, like just like children learn to read and write, because it's just
Agreed.
basic life skills. How is it possible that you need to wait until you're sick or overweight or I don't know, something happened for you to actually go and learn to eat? Like why people need to wait for that to go to a dietitian or to try, I don't know, 1001 diets since they are 14 to try to see what it works for them. Like we should always like since children we should since we're a child we should just learn this in school. And the same with the financial part. And this is like, I'm just gonna quote a classic here, the one from Robert Kiyosaki, Poor Dad, Rich Dad. It's just an attitude. Yes, yes. It's just an attitude. It's just how you see things in life, and of course, and this is coming from somebody that spent 15 years in the university. But education is important. Not everybody needs to have a PhD. In fact, I would advise, if somebody tells me should I do that, I was like, no, please don't. But it's also this thinking, like breaking the this box, or thinking outside the box, that the only way to succeed in life is actually to have like an education and follow like the path that society tells you, because it's not like that. And the key to this is education, but not the one that the system gives you, but in other aspects. So things that I think should be taught in school: financial education, nutrition education, and also emotional intelligence.
Absolutely.
If we know those three things, we can be successful in life, I believe. And healthy, of course.
Yeah.
Exactly. It kind of serves as the bedrock for being able to explore other topics. Because I feel like a lot of the, like, I don't know, depression and all these sorts of chronic diseases are the result of people not taking care of these situations, or like not taking care of their health, not taking care of their finances. And it's not really, I wouldn't want to say it's like their fault, because they just haven't been taught that. They've been taught different things that society has deemed fit. Not to put those other areas down, like history or mathematics or social studies or all these different ones, or English.
Yeah, we're just saying you kind of need.
You need a more, maybe just to incorporate these into the program itself.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think so. But I was curious, like, given that you're kind of at the forefront of this sort of industry, where do you see the industry going in the next 5 to 10 years? Or even more so, like, where would you like to see it going? Like, what's the ideal?
Well, I think maybe there's a big gap between those two.
Yeah.
But, yeah, so one of the things that I try to, like, on my LinkedIn, at least, like every 2 weeks, I write about how I don't think nutritionists or dietitians should exist, and the people always like get really angry because that's my point. I believe that, in the future, nutrition should be taught in school, like from a very early age. And I know that right now it's taught, of course, in science lessons or biology lessons. You learn about the basics, but I'm not speaking about this. I'm speaking about, like, since you're a child, learning to identify your nutritional needs, like really, like another core topic. So that's like something that I dream it would be something that we can see in the future. It's really difficult, but yeah. And I also think that every nutritional professional, like nutritionist or dietitian, it depends on the country, it depends on the certifications that they have, how they call it, should address not only, the knowledge part, the IQ part, but also the other aspects that I mentioned, the emotional part, how to adapt to the different social circumstances, and also to the other, challenges that I mentioned, like holidays and so on. That's why I came up with this framework. And the thing is that I know that it's not profitable to teach people to not depend on you.
Right.
But I think that's the best solution to actually have, like long-term good outcomes where people can actually be healthy according to their means. And unfortunately, what I see the industry going is that they make people depend on you. They just like they give you the perfect plan. And yes, of course, it's the perfect plan on paper, but they don't really know if you can follow it or not, if you're stressed or not, if you are going to struggle because you have deadlines and you're going to go for the bag of chips. So they really just make you dependable because that is what is profitable. And that's what all the fitness industry is trying to tell you. Like,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
you have this supplement, or you have this meal plan, or you have these perfect routines that I can create for you, but they don't really educate you. And so that's where it's going, where it has been going, and where it's going. Unfortunately, I think it's going to keep going like that for a few more years. I don't know how many, but I hope, and maybe it's just because I'm a dreamer, that in my lifetime I can see more and more people educating their customers so they are not dependable on them, and the change is actually real and sustainable. Yeah.
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 So that's also why. So one of the things that I am doing as an entrepreneur, besides using this framework with my clients, is that in 2026 I'm actually opening a training program for professionals that want to use the same as a framework like mine. So I'm yeah, opening officially the training program to teach this framework. And
Awesome.
That's
yeah,
amazing.
Very
and so
cool.
that's
Yeah.
my idea, to try to move the industry towards a more, like, let's educate people so they don't depend on us, and they have the empower enough with their knowledge to make their own decisions according to their needs and their possibilities. So yeah, that's the
Exactly.
ideal for me in terms of where the industry should be going.
That's
perfect.
awesome.
Yeah, we completely agree. Like that's one of the things with Path is that we don't want to be like gatekeepers of the knowledge. We want to empower people with the knowledge, like, and take those, because I think it's very like powerful what you said with having these PhD experts that are going to these forefronts, that are finding these like new ways of doing this, but then also showing people how to get to those or trying to help them translate it themselves.
Yeah.
And like one of the things that we do, why we split the pillars up with financial freedom, health and wellness, emotional intelligence, and really the bedrock that we want to create for people is to critically think, to be able to have the power to be like, okay, I know all that I could do. I have all these tools, but how do I go about this myself instead of outsourcing your thinking to someone else, which does have its time and place. Like,
Yeah.
yes, you need to learn by doing, and by doing, maybe you outsource it, like having a program to where you get into fitness in that regard, or having a meal plan. But like long term, having that ability to say, okay, I know, okay, maybe I need to prioritize protein, or maybe I need to do this like functional bodybuilding program, or maybe like, oh, I need to journal because journaling works for me. Like having these different tools in order to kind of push forward is like, I think, the best approach and where the industry should go.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. I echo everything he says. Yeah. So, do you have any last pieces of advice for our audience and for your audience as well?
Yeah, well, I will say that they need to find what it works for them. Because, I was one of those also, that of the 5 a.m. Club with the, the super strict routine, and like it didn't matter if it was summer or winter, and like all the visualizations and the affirmations and the exercise and everything. We
Yeah.
can quote, I don't know how many books to tell you about these things, um, which it works. But the thing is that it works until it doesn't. You need to work what works for you. So first, try to know your rhythm, and whenever possible, your circadian rhythm. That is, whenever possible, try to work around it. So if you're really a night owl, don't try to force yourself to wake up at 5 in the morning, because that's just gonna, backfire. And of course, when it's possible, again, it depends on, on your job. And the same goes with food. Try to not to follow trends, but try to, just take notes, and try to see your patterns, what works for you, what doesn't work for you. Of course, ideally, everybody should look for a professional that helps you with that, but not a professional just give you a meal plan and wants you to just pay for that forever, but somebody that actually really educates you, so you can
Yeah.
gain all those tools to just make better decisions with your own health and with your own life. So that's it. I believe that education is the key to any successful path in life, from business to health. But that's something that you need to try what really works for you and what doesn't. What is mainstream doesn't necessarily that work for some people or most people. That maybe it's not true, because social media can have whatever, and is that where people get most of the information right now. Just
Mhm.
like try to really see things with a critical eye, and try what works for you and stick to that. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
to be more, to take everything that you see on social media with a pinch of salt,
Yep.
and
Yep.
think twice before doing something, and really try to find out what works for you, because everything has to be individualized. We have different paths in life, whether it's health or finances or career. So yeah.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.